Hey, look over there.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ta-da! I am CharLee Simons, your host here on Tuna Talk. Yes, we're talking about nothing but tuna, yellowfin, skipjack, anything you can think of, fish related. That's what we're talking about today. And hold on a second. No, I'm sorry. This is Do Not Talk, which is talking about politics and religion. The two things you're never supposed to talk about. It's exactly what I talk about. Shut up, Charlie. You're causing division. You're the one creating the problem because the silent majority has found its voice. Finally. Now, I'm no longer talking to the sheep. I'm talking to the other lions. Wake up, say something, get involved. Stop sitting around and going, oh, somebody will take care of it. Oh, we got Trump in office. He'll take care of it. He'll fix it all. Not here in my state of California. There are such things as state rights. Our U.S. Constitution is designed and set up that way where states get to control things the way they want to control things. And if you don't like it, you can either work to change the representation that you have in your state of California or whatever state you live in, or you can move out, which many have. So many of my friends have just left the state, but I'm a little too stubborn. I'm just a little too stubborn. And I don't like to see the bad and the evil win. So I'm going to do whatever I can to try and expose it. Ephesians 5:11, be no part of the works of darkness, but instead even expose them. That's what this show does. What you do with it from there is up to you. But Simone Anderson is on my show. Simone is just awesome. One of the smartest people I know, and I just consider it an honor and a privilege to even know her. Never even met her in person. It's all been online, and I've had her on the show many times, and I always look forward to it anytime I do. My favorite so far was when it was you and Mike Cook and me. That show went almost 3.5 hours, and it flew by. And when I told you guys, both of you, at one point, we already had been on for over 2 hours, we were all shocked. I'm like, what? Didn't even seem like it. It was just like boom, 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 boom. It was so fun. So I'm not going to expect you to sit in that park wherever you are for 3.5 hours, but welcome to the show. And I'm glad you're here. You've got some great things going on and happening. Let's dive right into what it is that you wanted to bring up today.
Well, I think hello, Charlie, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I'm so happy to see you. I think we're going to meet in person. As you know, we're discussing some independent radio events for this fall. So stay tuned in for some more details. Both Charlie and I will be involved. We're going to have a few events around the state to support independent radio. As many of you know, over the last election season, George Soros went around and acquired most of the independent radio stations that were left in the United States, and of course
Right.
changed their
Over
programming.
200 of them. And the FCC, it's very suspect, the whole thing, because the FCC is supposed to monitor that kind of stuff. But with the deregulation of the FCC by Bill Clinton back in the 90s, Soros was able to buy over 200, and most of them Spanish language. Now, everyone keeps saying radio's dying. And there's no future for radio. Radio's not hiring, they're firing. And that's true. Many of them are going out of business. The big corporations that swooped in and bought them all up and so on are losing everything. They can't even get rid of their properties because everyone's saying, yeah, radio's done. Well, if that's the case and it has no effect and no influence on we the people, why would Soros buy over 200 stations across the nation and the FCC allow him to do it? Apparently, there's still something going on and some influence on radio that nobody else is telling us about. Soros doesn't just make those mistakes, doesn't do those kind of things by accident. There's a control and a takeover of the media with the influx of you and me and people like us with alternative media. They're trying everything they can to try and keep that power and influence in the mainstream media. Seems like it to me.
A lot of the radio stations today, like you said, are geared towards, like you were saying, Hispanic stations. So they're geared towards the new immigrants, which they believe that they have a more open mind and probably more prone to the brainwashing, etc. I have a friend, well, not a fellow podcaster, his wife speaks Spanish, and she says during Most broadcasts on Mexican television and radio, they pretend to be reporting what Trump is saying and other people are saying, and they don't. For people who are, English or Spanish or Chinese speakers or whatever they are, they're making false claims. They're not really translating what they're saying and what they mean. And so they're adding in words. And she said that repeatedly happens. So I think it's just another target for. And there's also a lot of you, especially in big cities, you have to understand radio is driven by targeted advertising. So of course, the small business, a lot of immigrants end up in cities and they start small independent businesses, and those are going to be the sponsors for your radio station too. So they're kind of going.
Well, they're the Spanish language folks, for the most part, demographically are Catholic. Whether they're practicing or not, they are. And their king just died.
Yes, I think that's what we're going to talk about today. So, a lot of people don't understand the connection between the Vatican, the financial system, and communism. And as you know, on my station, I'd like to explore the structures that control our lives. And what many people don't understand is the Vatican is still the controlling political system in the world. Rome did not fall. A lot of leaders of the Roman Empire's ancestors, including like Jill Biden's family, Nancy Pelosi's family, many people on the right, their families descend from the ancient Roman families that were the slave owners and that they were the oppressors of humanity for a long time. Rome never fell. And then when the Eastern Western Empire were separated, the king of the Eastern Empire, even though he didn't have the legal power to do so, gave the Pope the power over Christianity and the control of the Christian church, although he did not have. And through that, this was called the Justinian deception. A lot of people may be aware of this construct in history, but it captured Europe, Western Europe, back into its power and started passing all the laws. And the greatest beneficiary were the lawyers, because before that, law was practiced independently. So Justinian created the legal class that we have today, where we see the warfare, where we see everything is litigated. So this goes way back to the Roman system. As we've discussed on your channel before, the reason the world closed down in 2020 was because the Vatican Bank, also called the City of London, the Bank of England, went bankrupt. And if anybody wants to go, they can go to the Financial Times the day of the COVID lockdown, and they can see that that the City of London Bank of England, which is not part of England, it's a private papal city. And it's called a city within a city. And many people, I've worked in the City of London myself. You pass under a bridge, it's got the Knights Templar flag above it, and you enter the Vatican Roman City of London. And it's also where we get the Union Jack flag, which was also the City of London flag that they use today. And why it's equated with slavery, because slavery was a huge part of the success of the Roman Empire. And the political and religious organizations continue to launder the human trafficking and drug money through their institutions. We're going to see this. So I'm kind of today, I know it's kind of crazy to put these two things together. What's going on with China? What happened? Not only did the Pope supposedly pass away yesterday, but Klaus Schwab resigned, and he's the head of the World Economic Forum, who considers himself, does not believe in God. But if you'll notice, all of the United Nations is about bringing about, a lot of people don't understand the founding principles of the United Nations, but that is to bring about one military, one government, and one religion. And the leader
Oh,
of
yeah.
that will be the Pope. That's why the Vatican sits on the United Nations, an illegal organization that has no power to exist, that is usurping the rights of our country and our constitution and trying to create this one world government. And if people don't think that's true, let's look at the last 1,000 years. In Europe, when Rome fell, or the Roman powers were failing, they implemented the Inquisition. And a lot of people believe they murdered over 110 million people. Why so many of our ancestors jumped on a ship and went to America, Australia, and New Zealand? Because they were using the same construct of basically communism. You either submit to our will, submit to our military, submit to our religion, because in communism, you worship the leader, like Xi Jinping. If you noticed in China, right now, you've probably seen the reporting on some of the Christian networks, but they've gone around in all the churches and replaced the cross with Xi Jinping's picture. So, although communism and the construct of communism itself was funded and founded by the Vatican, although the Pope was given the credit for ending communism in Europe, that's completely false. The Communist Party was financed and executed via the same Roman Empire to recapture the East and recapture the Middle East and restore it back to the great empire they really had. And this sounds crazy to a lot of people because we can't even think 5 years ahead. But these groups of people plan hundreds of years in advance. China plans to be the leader of the world. And many people believe the Pope died yesterday. I do not. These people are occultists, just like the Queen of England died several years before. The big riffraff between uh, Harry and his wife is Meghan exposed that the Queen was dead and that she had been dead for some times. And if you watch political channels or channels, they had this called Operation London Bridge, I believe was the name of it, and they were making it like there was a strike. But London Bridge is actually the plan that's executed when the Queen dies. The Queen and the royal families of Europe lost their power in 1122 at the Concordance of Worms to the Vatican. And the Vatican has owned the royal families of Europe since that time. And anybody who goes against them, for instance, like Henry VIII, is taken out of power.
King
You know,
Henry VIII, yeah, literally started the Church of England just because the Catholic Church would not recognize him divorcing the series of wives, which
well, and that's kind of the story that they use. The real story is he was trying to take back the power that was given to the Catholic Church a few hundred years earlier, because the King of England, who was the ruler of the world at time, defaulted on a contract he had with the Vatican. And once he defaulted on that contract, there was no recourse. His title was given over. So that's why we see the royal family. I mean, I have no idea why people are so interested in them. We fought a war to get away from them. Uh,
right.
they are
Look
the
at Canada.
perpetrators.
Canada's fascinated with them. The Queen of England's on their money. It's odd to me.
Okay, because the the Queen is still the Queen of Canada. Canada is not a republic. Canada is a commonwealth. It is part of the British Crown. So a lot of people don't understand that Canada, the Prime Minister of Canada, does not serve the Queen. He serves the City of London. That's why they have had a communist leading Canada for the last 10 years. It's well documented his father was a communist. His father was heavily involved in the MK Ultra mind control. There's children or grown women today my age that are on the internet. I've seen a bunch of them right now that are openly talking about being repeatedly raped by Pierre Trudeau, the father of the current Justin Trudeau, and that he was part of the MK Ultra mind control. If you remember from one of our interviews in the past, Kamala Harris's mother spent 7 years at McGill. And according to Judge Joe Brown, who seems to really have the goods on Kamala Harris and needs to be careful of what he says because he is an attorney, so he understands what you're saying could be libelous, that Kamala Harris's mother was in charge of, or one of the key factors in the mind control Nazi programs at McGill University. And so that's why her daughters have multiple personalities and they go from one language to another language. They were probably all put through these trauma situations. And again, that's why they're in power today. So people might remember the First Lady of Canada, Pierre Trudeau, was gay, and he had an arranged marriage with an elite a lady who also went through the McGill University. She ran off with the Rolling Stones while she was First Lady of Canada and went on tour with them for 6 months, and then ended up in Cuba with Fidel Castro, who is Pierre Trudeau's brother, and came back pregnant with Justin Trudeau. And that's been exposed. My ex-husband was Canadian. He told me this story in like 1985, but it's mainstream today. And it's pretty well known that Justin Trudeau is Pierre Cass, and they look just alike. Many people don't realize that actually his older brother was to be the heir to the throne of the Canadian, basically, crown. But he mysteriously almost died in a car accident. Was in critical condition for a long time. 6 months later, he recovered. He went skiing, and only him out of the 60 party people was killed in an avalanche. And they didn't look for him for 6 months. So it was highly unusual. Justin Trudeau looks like this drama teacher kind of guy that's all like touchy feely. I believe he comes from a very, very dark place. So that's something different than we're talking about today. What's going on in Canada today is that Canada allowed the CCP to build large underground military bases on the border of the US and Canada. This is why I believe we have been at war with Canada for several years. Not the amazing Canadian people who I love dearly. I was married to a Canadian for
Me
years. Some
too.
of my closest friends
Hmm.
are Canadian people. Canadians are the
Love them.
hardest people to talk to about these kind of topics. They have one government news. They have a high standard of living, and it's
That's
just
right.
that.
Like the BBC, they have the CBN, Canadian Broadcasting Network, and you will only learn what they want you to learn, and watch what they want you to watch, and laugh at what they want you to laugh at.
And who's
Um,
funding them because they're broke, like all independent media networks? The government, Pierre Trudeau's been cutting them $600 million checks. So they work for him, and it's similar in the BBC. The BBC has lost so much credibility. They've now put a new tax because they have a TV tax in Europe
oh,
and in
really?
England. And so now they put a new tax where people who are no longer watching the BBC have to pay an £8 a month fee so they can watch the streaming they're already paying for, so that the BBC can support itself because they can't get any advertisers because nobody's watching them anymore. Very similar to the things we found out about NBC, ABC, the New York Times, all the different media that was being funded via US aid. So there's similar things going around the world. And I guess I kind of want to get back because the structure that we live in, which is called Admiralty law, which is controlled via the City of London, they control our air, our roads, and our trains,
And our
all
legal system.
exactly.
When you
And so,
pass the bar as an attorney in the United States of America, that's all a British system, isn't it?
right. And why do the Americans belong to the British Admiralty? Because they really serve the City of London, because the courts are owned by in the Admiralty law system. When you go into court and you hire a lawyer, you're seen as mentally incompetent, insane, and invisible. The House always wins. It doesn't matter. So when you go into a court of law in the United States, look right behind the judge. There's a flag that has fringe on it, and that means you're under the corporate construct of the United States, who the bankers illegal captured us into their construct. The people of Washington, D.C. only have authority in Washington, D.C. for a 10-mile radius, yet they've put it over all of us. So this is really what's going down, is the collapse of the system and the reorganization of all of our trade agreements, all of our shipping agreements, because the system that we were in collapsed. And if you want to go to the Federal Reserve, you can look up the banks on the 21st of, was it March in 2020, or they were allowed to have zero reserves. And again, this is the reason that our politicians on both sides of the aisle who work for the private foreign corporation that's bankrupt, that no longer has power to rule us, they won't go away. And so that's why they've been so desperate to print all of this money and get us into the debt system again that they got us in after the Civil War. So we're really, I believe, at the end of a 125 to 150-year battle with these foreign bankers that our ancestors left Europe to get away from.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be some kind of special stupid to not understand that time and time again we see throughout history, if the government keeps pushing money into the system and paying for everything and buying everything and supporting everything and keep printing money and keep pushing into the system, we're going to have massive inflation. We saw it during the Joe Biden 4 years, but there's still they've been getting away with it. And you're right, it's to create a debt system, isn't it?
Well,
Um,
they want to re-get us into the debt system. They've got to pay their system. They can't have the banks fail while they're trying to overthrow the government. You see, they can't. This is why it's been so crazy with US aid. I mean, the Vatican Church itself. I mean, I completely disagree, and I don't know if they're playing the game or whatever, but Trump is openly very supportive of the Catholic Church. Kamala Harris wrote a lot of grief for not going to that dinner where they raised $10 million. Well, that same day, that same week, the Catholic Diocese of just Los Angeles was ruled $780 million for raping children. And they believe, and when the final payout is going to be $1.5 billion. And the last time I looked a few years ago, the Catholic Church had paid out $7 billion just in the United States. And there's always been these rumors whenever they have these big lawsuits, they all say, oh, we're not able to make our pension, this and that. But if you look at US aid, who do you think, just like we've been paying the pension of all the people in Ukraine, who do you think's been paying the pension of the Vatican priests that have all been sent to these homes after a lot of them raped children? And now they're living in, they just got transferred around, raped more children, and finally when they began too much trouble, they retire in one of these. And again, I went to Catholic school, I took my grandma to Catholic church. This is not an attack on the regular Catholic people, but they have to stand up. I don't have one Catholic friend that's upset as I am that the fact that their church spent $10 billion and is constantly getting, that their money they're donating isn't going to help the poor. It's going to pay off pedophile cases. So why are they protecting it? I mean, it's completely insane. People have to remove themselves from the paradigm and start looking at the world the way it really is. And that's why I like to explore the structures that control our lives, so people can see that these things just aren't occurring naturally, that these people for many, many years have been planning this world domination. And it's the dream of Alexander the Great. It's the dream of Hitler, Napoleon, you name it, the Ottoman Empire. Throughout history, this has been occurring, and these people want to trap us all into the system. And again, communism. What was the strongest Christian country in the world before communism? And still to this day considers itself a Christian nation? Russia.
what? Russia?
Russia. You know what the shield of the Russian royal family is? It's a knight on a white horse slaying the serpent. So we can get into our connections with Russia. The United States, the reason they want to divide with Russia right now, besides the things, we overthrew the Ukrainian government and put Zelensky in. You can go listen to the recordings from the State Department. They funded it. They've been robbing the Ukrainians blind since the fall of communism. It used to be one of the largest industrial bases, and I'm talking John McCain, I'm talking uh, uh, who is Romney.
Mitt
They are
Romney.
all, yes, it's on both sides. And that's why they're so desperate to bring Russia down. If you notice, uh, people, people like Bernie Sanders loved Russia when they were communist. He spent his honeymoon there.
Yep.
Now they're the enemy because they don't want communism anymore. And I lived and worked in Russia for years. I had a vicious battle. I went all the world court. I lost a massive amount of money. And I'm putting that aside because I can't put my own experience. People are always going to say, "Oh, well, I didn't do that. They didn't do that," because this thing, like Americans, they always try to compare everything to themselves, which none of us are those people. None of us grew up in these elite generational families. We don't really know. All we can do is look from the outside. So to me, the death of the Pope, the fact that Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum, resigned on the same day in his 88th year, and the Pope was 88. I believe the Pope died several years ago. There's been numerous channels, just like they've got someone playing Nancy Pelosi and all these different, Bill Gates is totally different people. It's the same with people in other parts of the world. They have these people that are up there. And I mean, if you look at the woman they have playing Nancy Pelosi right now, and a picture of Nancy Pelosi 25 years ago, she's like 20 years younger, and they're running out of body doubles because this woman doesn't even look close. You know,
Right. It
yeah.
is weird. Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking, man, they have an extraordinary plastic surgeon, or that's not really them.
No, it's not.
Um,
Well, and I know they use body doubles. This is a normal thing.
you can
Politicians.
do voice analyzation though. That's very, very precise. I've never seen any of that released about analyzing these people's voices. Are they really the same person? Have you seen
Have
anything
you
like that?
look at them? I mean, I don't need someone to tell me. Like someone asked me one time, "Oh, I was just a conspiracy theorist because I thought Michelle Obama was a man." I said, "The first time I ever saw Michelle Obama, I said, that's a man." And I literally had some far left friends of mine that lived in the city, and I didn't understand. I'd met them socially when I went to their house that they were total Satanists. But they pulled up all the videos of Michelle, with her, she's wearing white pants. You can see what's under her pants. When she doesn't think anyone's looking, she does the guy adjustment there. I don't want to get too graphic, but I didn't need anyone to tell me. I don't need the television to tell me that's someone different. I grew up in San Francisco. I know what Nancy Pelosi looks like. I watched that
Mm,
woman for years. I can
right.
see that that's not her.
Yeah. Why and
uh,
why would they keep that alive? Why would they prop that office up instead of
the
just running
power,
somebody else?
the
Exactly.
power.
Because you have
And
a
she's
whole lot of
also one of
very
the,
stupid people who will continue to vote for that thing, the crypt keeper. 150 years from now, they'll still be voting for anyone with the last name or the name of Nancy Pelosi. It could be a dachshund, and they don't care. It's seriously sad. And that's why I don't see a lot of light at the end of the tunnel here in California. I mean, I love the new California idea. I just had Chris Ann Hall on, and we were talking about that, the validity of it, the possibility of it. It's a hard sell the way it's designed now with Paul Preston. You and I are friends of his. I've had him on several times as well. But oh my goodness, I so want it. I so want it to happen. Because I don't
well,
see a
there,
light at the end of the tunnel. Now we have millions of people, thanks to Jerry Brown, motor voter law. We have millions of illegals who are voting, and then you throw in the election fraud. How do we ever recover?
uh, I think we just have to wait and see what happens. People have to rise up and they have to do what we're doing. If you tried to talk to people about this 5 years ago, it's been so overwhelming, the information. And so many people, I was talking to Paul on his show one time, and I was like, my extreme liberal friend in Montreal called me and said, "Do you think the fires in California were direct energy weapons?" And I'm like, I've tried to talk to her for 7 or 8 years because my belief is that Canada has been collapsed. Canada is part of the British Commonwealth. The city of London and the city and Wall Street financed the communist movement. They financed the socialist movement of Hitler. I mean, if many people remember, Hitler was on the front of Time magazine at least 3 times, and he was filling the stadiums here. I
Man of
mean,
the year. Man of the year.
George Bush Sr.'s father tried to overthrow the US government, and when that failed, they caused the Depression for 10 years, brought in the birth certificate system where they literally took control of our birth certificates. And since that time in 1933, we have been under the direct control of the people who
Corporation.
our ancestors left Europe to get away from
It's a
500 years ago.
corporation.
Yes, the
It's a
corporation.
corporation.
Okay, so the Pope is been laundering through the Holy See. I believe that a lot of the assets of the Vatican have been seized. I think there's been a lot going on during the closure when everything was closed. during the epidemic or pandemic, the sorry, I drew a blank there.
That's all right. Let me
Yeah.
throw this in, though. Let me throw this in to refresh your
Okay.
memory. You realize it was 5 years ago now, this month, that the whole worldwide shutdown happened.
Right.
5 years ago already, 5 years later this month.
And
Uh,
again, it's because the financial system collapsed. That's why all the banks were closed. That's why the airplanes didn't fly. That's why the trains didn't move and you couldn't go on the freeway. And all of the government agencies were closed. So that structure has collapsed. It's whether we believe we're getting into a new structure, like a lot of people are all cut up on Nasara Jasara, which to me is just another repackaging of communism. They say it's based on the Saint Germain Trust, which this guy, Saint Germain, his family says it's not based on their trust, that they have the original trust that ruled the United States. And that's what's being implemented right now. So, why do we need to have any trust? We don't need to have any trust over us because we're a free people. So, this is really what we have to understand and what we're fighting. And the thing with the CCP, and so the Vatican, I believe, was laundering a lot of money into Iran and the Middle East. They were taking the foreign aid, they were laundering it through the Vatican banks, and then they were dispersing it into these NGOs. And that's why we're seeing the mass invasion of the United States, because as you're well aware, the Pope thinks we should just all let everybody walk into our country. Like
yes.
65% of the world's population wants to
My
immigrate.
first question when he made that statement was, I'm sorry, what is the Vatican surrounded by?
Exactly. And the Vatican is a Swiss organization. The Vatican, Switzerland, is a papal state. The Vatican is protected by the Swiss Guard, and that's why they're never invaded. And that's why they've been able to maintain a neutral country in the middle of Europe when everyone else was destroyed, because all the spoils of all the wars have always gone back to the Vatican Trust. And if you don't think that, why don't you just go take a tour of the Vatican and understand why they have all of the good stuff from all over the world for the last 1,000 years? Because to the victor goes the spoils. So
Wow.
this is really what we're confronting, not the regular people that are good people that go to church, but you have to wonder, why are they condoning and still giving? And you try to bring a Catholic, the pedophile thing, up to a Catholic, and people just shut you down.
I know, it's
So in a
weird.
way, they're supporting it, and then they're sending their own children to be alone with these priests. And
Yeah.
I've known some really good priests. My dad was also Catholic. I used to go to lunch with his priest, and his priest used to come every Christmas to our house. This is the political Roman structure that's enslaved the world under the Masonic system for almost 3,000 years.
There
And
you
that is
are.
basically the birth certificate system. So, what they've been able to implement in China, people don't understand who overthrew China. The city of London, because they didn't want to pay for their silk. They didn't want to pay for their, so they did, and exactly why, one of the reasons we're at Canada now, the British are using Canada as a conduit for all the fentanyl. It's being processed in Canada and sent over our border. This is the way they collapsed China, and they addicted half the Chinese population to opium. This is exactly what's going on right now. They've allowed the CCP to build underground bases all along our border.
When she
And
says CCP, by the way, she's talking about the Communist Chinese Party. For
yeah,
anybody who doesn't know, I never want to assume everyone knows.
yeah, yeah. And the again, they are ruled by the British Crown. There is no constitution for the Canadian people, right? They're just kind of in limbo, and they're being used right now to, the other thing is this has been reported for the last 5 years. China has been training troops in Canada. The Canadian military was forced to train over 300,000 Chinese troops, and their leaders were also sent to China to train them in
Thank
frozen
you
ground.
for recalling that to my memory because I had forgotten about that and everybody kind of shut up. It made some big noise for about a week that there's communist troops amassed in Canada and everybody's like, wait, what? What's going on? And then it went away. It
Well, they
all
took
went
over
away.
all the mining areas in northern Canada, which were predominantly left to the Indians. They still own 2% of Canada as the First Nations people. And if there's a book called The Trail of Tears and other documentaries about what the Chinese are doing, they're systematically genociding the people, particularly the women, and they're harvesting their unborn children and their body organs. So this is going on all over
I
China,
know that's happening in China with the
happening in
Muslims as
northern
well.
Canada.
It's happening in Canada too, you're saying?
Yes, you can look up a book called The Trail of Tears, and it goes into detail about this. But this has been going on in Canada again. Trudeau is openly a communist who praises China all the time. Again, he's a representative to the Queen's Privy Council. If you listen to his swearing in, there's not one thing about Canada, Canadian people. He swears his allegiance to the Queen's Privy Council. So
Interesting.
this is really what's going on between Canada and the US. And Canada, sorry, I've got a fly flying around here. Yeah,
You're gesticulating and moving around like Governor
I'm
Gavin
speaking
Newsom.
with my hands, but in this
Governor Gavin
instance,
Newsom impression.
oh my
Uh,
gosh, Gavin Newsom is completely insane. You
yeah.
know, he's having everyone's wondering why he's having conservative people on his channel because no one would watch it if the conservatives weren't on it. Because you'll notice a bunch of different people like Gavin Newsom and Michelle Obama. I don't know if you've listened to her thing. I mean, her thing is like her and her brother just complaining like they're at the coffee table and she's talking about how she hated being married to Obama the entire time he was president. I mean, I don't know what's going on there. I mean, maybe she's super upset about the Jennifer Aniston affair. I don't know. Right? Have you seen that
Uh,
story where Jennifer
yeah,
Aniston?
I'm just shocked that anybody would think that Barack Obama, Barry Soetoro, would be interested in a woman. So
Well, I take a close look at
that's why I don't believe
Jennifer
you're exactly right.
Aniston. Yeah, she comes from a generational Greek acting family. So the chances she's a woman is probably pretty low. I take a
I
close look on
remember you saying
everybody.
that last show, and I was like, "Wait, what? Come on!"
Yeah, I take a close look at most people on that show if I were you. Yeah.
Oh, that's
But let's
so
get back.
funny.
I want to kind of get into, so I don't know if I'm connecting all the dots. The CCP and communism is a papal construct. The World Economic Forum and the United Nations is a
It's a
communist
religion, basically. It's a form of
papal
religion. It's just
construct,
another
right?
denomination. Is
And
communism.
well, right. And their
You worship
main
the
goal
government.
is to prepare the world for the rule of Lucifer. You can go to the United Nations founding documents.
Yep.
Their main goals are to legalize pedophilia, to remove the male female gender, and destroy the family. Why are we giving them all this money? And you can go look this stuff up yourself. What got me down this track is about 7 or 8 years ago. I was just listening to some random person on the radio, and they were talking about how the United Nations, or how the United Nations was going to bring about the rule of Lucifer over the planet. And I'm like, what is going on? So I go on the United Nations, and they have all these graphs that show that 90% of the people in Europe and the United States, all of the white people in the world, were going to be dead by 2027. So this is what got me down all this stuff. One of my cousins was trying to show me rules for radicals because he's a far lefty. And I'm like,
Saul
oh no. He
Alinsky.
goes, well, what
Yeah.
about the Bush family?
Yeah.
And so once I got down the Bush family and the crimes they committed and the fact that they're the largest heroin dealers in the world, and I mean just on and on and on. I take a close look at Barbara Bush there too. Yeah. You know, she looks just like Aleister Crowley. Her family were occultists involved in group sex parties with Aleister Crowley right before she was born. So I've seen people who track their trips, show that they were there, show that they were at the hotel, and take a close look at Barbara Bush. Okay, She looks just like Aleister Crowley. So let's get back to the CCP. I know that we've been kind of getting off on all these tangents because there's always so much to talk about.
Simone, I love you. But you say things that are like, I've just been physically slapped in the face.
And I'm not randomly just saying
No,
things.
I
That's a
know,
lot
I know, I
that I've
know.
been
I
into.
just I'm stunned at how asleep I have been to so many things. But
Well, I don't know if you watch Paul's show, but recently he had this woman on who was the private sex slave from the age of 3 years old into her teen years for George Bush Sr. And she also outs some other people, but it's a pretty sad. She's got a book out right now. One of the reasons I think so many of these people are coming out is because they're safe now and they can come out and do these things. So it's one of the things that gives me hope that things are going to change and improve because
but yet
all
they
of us,
referenced God. They referenced they claim to be Christians. But that's the danger. Jesus warned us about that
well,
that would
I
happen.
mean, I don't use the word Christian myself. I consider myself a follower of Christ. The word Christian
Same,
itself
same.
is a construct of the Roman Empire who owned all the Roman people in the birth certificate system. But one of the things Jesus was telling them is you're your own person. Your birth certificate doesn't need to be owned. Why do you think there was such a big battle? It had to do with money, and I could never figure out what it was. But I believe Christ was teaching they could be outside the Roman birth certificate system. And when he says,
Interesting.
because in their system we're dead cargo. So you can have eternal life when you're out of the system, right? So that's a whole other show. We can go into that some other day. But here,
Catholicism has fallen so out of favor because of the actions of their own, leaders in the church. Um,
well,
how
Catholicism was always the Roman priest. The priest class has always ruled the world, not the politicians, the priest class. So we have to. The politicians are owned by the bankers, and the bankers are owned by the Vatican.
well now that the Pope has kicked it, and I had people going, Charlie, you talk so much about the Catholic Church and it being an occult and everything else, but you haven't mentioned anything about the Pope dying. If you can't say anything nice about anybody, so I just stayed completely out of it. Yeah, Pope
Well,
kicked it.
the Pope, I
What a
believe, passed
shock.
away.
He's been
Yeah, the
sick for who
Pope.
knows how long. But you're it sounds like you're suggesting to me that ushering in the beast system, as I've learned now, is called, which is very biblical. That is Revelation stuff. But it sounds to me like you're saying that whomever is going to be the next pope, whoever's going to be crowned, is the Antichrist.
Well, there's two popes. There's the dark pope and there's the white pope. The white pope is the figurehead. The dark pope is the Jesuit Vatican military operation, like the Knights Templar, right? So
Interesting.
there are different structures. Like right now, the recent pope was a Jesuit, which is against Vatican law itself. You shouldn't be a Jesuit because the Jesuit is the military arm.
Yeah,
The
I
white
wondered why that
pope
was allowed.
because they're operating under their own laws. They don't care. They were on the verge of collapsing the entire world economic system and bringing about communism. That's really what we're fighting. And as a person who's been in, I was living in Greece when the Communist Party took over there in the 80s. I was living in Russia when communism collapsed, and I saw the devastation to the people. And I was also in Venezuela when the communists took over there. So a lot of times I'm speaking from direct experience in these systems. It's not just my opinion, and I've seen the atrocities. And as we're speaking today, I pray for all the Catholics out there. I pray for all the Chinese people who've been deprived of God through communism. And I'm speaking to give people more information to make better decisions because many people believe we're in apocalyptic times. And the word apocalypse
I
literally
do.
translates to unveiling. So
Yeah.
the veil is being lifted and we can see the world the way it truly is. And I believe A lot of people are preaching end times, and they want the end times. Both the Muslim and the Jewish believe that it's their duty to the people who live under what they call the Noahide laws. They believe it's their duty to bring about
To
this.
usher it in. I know, which Jesus was very clear. Of course, they're not going to be following or believing or listening to
Well,
anything
and
Jesus
this is
said,
the
but
big
Jesus
rift.
said, what's that?
This is the big rift between many people who are Jewish and the Israel, right? Because Israel believes they're bringing about man is bringing about the conditions to rebuild the temple.
Rebuild
Whereas
the temple, yeah.
you can go into many Jewish communities around the world. There's no Israeli flag because they believe that they are still that God will return them to the land, not man, not war, that they will be returned because they're still in exile because they turned against God so many times in the past. So this is the big debate in the religion of one of the predominant religions in the world, because a lot of people are secular Jews and don't believe in God. So it's very
I
confusing.
know. I know. It's like they're
Okay,
just it's like they're in a club. It's like they're in a big club with very strict rules.
and they are.
That's what it is.
They're in the Satan's club,
But
and
yeah, and I see that so much in the American Christian church now. Eric McTaxis is fantastic with all of this, and he's written some extraordinary books about it. The Americanization of Christianity has turned us into a weak, ridiculous joke of what the original church was like and what it was all about, and what Jesus shouldn't say tried to, did accomplish, and it will happen. It will. God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven, whether you like it or not, American church. But in the meantime, they're just preaching this whole kind of syrupy, sappy, sweet little hippie Jesus that had no strength and no power and definitely had no say in running government. But that is completely so far away from biblical truth, and pastors are not preaching it or teaching it, and they might not even know it now at this point, because they're not encouraging following their own flock to read the word. They're spoon feeding it to them 22 minutes every week. Yeah, and that's it. And people aren't reading the word for themselves, so they're so easily duped and fooled. That
well,
alone, Simone, that alone, if people dedicated themselves to reading a chapter a day, that keeps false teachers away in the New Testament, because that's where our salvation is. And don't skip around. Oh, God will talk to me. No, please follow it in order. Start with the book of John. A chapter a day takes 5-10 minutes to read a chapter out of the Bible. And if you did that and devoted that and you made that your habit every day, it will change your life. It will change your life forever for the better. And you won't be fooled. You won't be fooled and roped into all this kind of stuff. You will have discernment and pray and ask for that. Jesus told us to ask for that. Okay, that's
well,
my sermon. That's my
the,
sermon, Simone.
the term church itself refers to Circe or Circus, also the goddess of deception. So the actual word,
No, church means the people,
no, it
ecclesia,
doesn't.
right?
No, it doesn't. No, we've been taught to use all these words that mean nothing. Jesus worshipped in a temple, not a church. So, and where is our temple?
In a synagogue,
Where
not a,
is our temple?
not a temple, in a synagogue, right?
Right here. God doesn't
Okay.
need a building. The
No, well,
reconnection of the third temple is
he
we
did
were
build it. He did have a
reconnecting with
temple built,
God.
though, and there were certain specifications for that temple. And King Solomon had built the grandest, that's for sure.
Well,
Um,
King Solomon summoned demons to build that temple. So how is that? And he was married to many. Yeah, the Solomon is the basis of the Masonic religion. So I think there's been a lot of messing around with things in our texts and translations, because why would a man of God summon demons to build the temple? And then, of course, he kept them and then he imprisoned them below the temple. And that's supposedly what the Knights Templar, when you see the Baphomet, you see the Knights Templar carrying the Baphomet with the black and white floor beneath it. That symbolizes them bringing the demons out of the Temple of Solomon. And that's who they believe is controlling the system today. So that's a whole other story. We can get into that. We can do the whole Temple of Solomon thing if you want. You know me, I can't
I've
just
just been
agree with
slapped in the
I
face
can't
again.
agree with anything.
Dang.
Yeah, and I believed all
Dang.
this stuff at one time, but I believe that the Bible is also a poetic book. And when they're talking about the mark on our hand and the mark on our head and the mark in our hand, they're talking about the actions of our hands and the thoughts in our mind. The third temple is restoring our pineal gland that we used to be able to connect with God, and they've calcified it, and we no longer have that connection. That we were separated in the Garden of Eden, and we're still striving to have that connection with God rebuilt. So that's
The word talks
my
about the word talks about their consciences have been seared. So are you telling me then that you don't believe the Holy Bible is the inerrant word of God?
I believe that it's been dramatically altered because I read the old texts. Like, for instance, like the whole Noah's Ark thing. If you read the ancient Egyptian or Serbian, the oldest Bibles, they say they took the seed of all the animals. They've been genetically modifying us for a long time. There's substantial evidence we were much more advanced civilizations in the past, and that all this has been covered up. And I believe that the Bible was inspired by God. But have you ever read the book of Adam and Eve? No, because they took it out. Have you ever read the last chapters of the book of Esther? No, because they took it out. So it's been dramatically altered to fit the Catholicism system, and that started way back at the meeting of Nicaea, right? And whose Mohammed's great grandfather was a member of, right? Because Mohammed was a Roman, financed by the Romans to bring the Middle East back under Roman control and the Vatican. He was married to a Chaldean nun. You can go on the Vatican website and you can read the letters
He
that
was
were
married
written.
to a lot of different things.
Exactly. He was also married to a child who, was taken when she was playing. If you read her own testimony, she was playing with her dolls and she was taken, and her marriage was consummated at the age of 8. So you can go right into the Muslim documents. They
Sick
condone child
pig.
marriage. This is why we know it's part of the Catholic religion. Where else is this child activity going on? Right? You can go every day. There's clerics from all over the world visiting the Pope, and he's saying, "Oh, we all believe in the same God." And we don't believe in the same God. Allah is the daughter of the sun and the moon god, a female entity, Hagia
Right.
Sophia. Like they have a. So I keep wanting to get back to CCP, and we keep talking about all this stuff. So yeah.
That's all right. Let's because I do have several other questions, thoughts, and comments
Okay.
with the stuff that you brought up. But
Okay. Go
if you
ahead.
want to get
Go
back to the
ahead.
CCP, you're okay. Look, somebody brought this to my attention, and it dawned on me. Oh my goodness! Look how far we've come from the time of Jesus to where we are now. A little over 2,000 years, right? The progress, what we have been able to accomplish, even going through the dark ages and medieval times and all this kind of stuff. Look where we are now, what we accomplished in 2,000 years. Now, let's go that back. Let's split it up because I believe in the timeline of the Bible. I think we're not millions of years old. The planet might be older, but mankind has been on it for a little over 6,000 years or so.
You know what the actual original Bibles say our timeline is?
What?
We're in 7,500. And according to the Jewish calendar, we're in 3,500, 100 years away from when their Messiah arrives. They've changed our time. I can do a whole show on how they've changed. The Antichrist will change time, right? In history, right?
Okay.
So
But
I can
look,
do a whole show
because
on that.
you said something that, and this it solidified what I've been contemplating ever since somebody brought this to my attention. It was about 2,000 years from the time of Adam and Eve, creation of mankind, and remember they lived to be 1,000 years old and older because they were closer to perfection than we are now. So they lived a long, long time. It was about 2,000 years before Noah, for the flood. And look at what we've been able to accomplish in 2,000 years. Imagine what they were able to accomplish in 2,000 years. You said it was a very advanced civilization. I believe that. I can see that now. I can understand that.
Look at the
And then,
building.
Then there's from the time of the flood to when Jesus came, another 2,000 years. So look what they were able to accomplish. But the time that Jesus came, the Bible is silent for about 400 years. We don't even know what happened. But they did not accomplish what we were able to accomplish unless you consider the pyramids of Egypt and so on, where they did extraordinary things. The accomplishments and buildings of things that were, we have people accrediting that to aliens coming from outer space and doing it for us and that kind of stuff. Like, what, you're thinking that they couldn't come up with different ways? And then when there's a reshift or a reset, because God pulls the rug out from under the whole dang thing and goes, you know what? Forget it. Scrabble, do over, etch a sketch, do over, just start drawing again. I can see that there's much validity to things that you were saying, and I've heard others say.
I've just traveled all over the world, and things don't make sense. Why does Notre Dame look exactly like the San Francisco? Supposedly, Father Sarah built all these. He didn't even have a horse, but he built all these massive cathedrals that are earthquake-proof, by the way. I don't know if they never advertised the San Francisco mission because it looks exactly like Notre Dame, and you can see it was dug out.
Interesting.
So they've replaced our history. They destroyed all the real history books when they took over the Federal Reserve. I remember my grandmother telling me once that can you hear that in the background?
No.
Okay, good. That she never learned about one person we're taught about at school today when she was growing up in school. Because they changed our history books and they removed the real history. A lot of the people we view as heroes, like for instance, Benjamin Franklin was a warlock, heavily involved in the dark arts. There's entire books this thick about his magicians and all these things. He was a triple traitor to the United States. He was also a spy for the French and the British. And we know that
he spent an awful lot of time in France and in brothels and so on, having little sex parties. I didn't read that in my history book.
No.
When I was 9.
The reason we know that is because when you go to the British Museum, his assistant was accused of being a traitor. It was really him. And we know that because the British have all of his original documents in their archives that he was sending back to England. So
interesting.
And the English and the French, their aristocratic families are all related. So maybe they had the people fighting the battles of the leaders just like we have today. So those things can go really off. Did you have another question before we go back to the CCP?
No, that's what I was going to say. I know that's what you want to talk about, and it's very important that we all know.
I'm just trying to illuminate to people. People don't understand the United States was the wealthiest country in the world when we had tariffs. Who removed the tariffs? The bankers who illegally took our country over, and they wanted to implement income tax the way the Roman system had enslaved humanity for the last 2,000 years. So they needed to remove the tariffs of what they did. And their goal of supposedly when we brought the Federal Reserve, they were going to stabilize interest rates. We were never going to have another depression, right? They were going to increase business. They repeatedly failed. And what happened? We had the depression like 15 years later. And then they got us our birth certificates. Once they got their foot in the door, they illegally bribed and blackmailed our politicians. This is nothing new. This has been going on throughout the history. And we were sold out. You can read a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island that goes into detail about how this happened. And
just had Scotty Sachs on yesterday. He said that's what changed. He was a flaming leftist. Hollywood, producer and made things happen, and user and abuser of talented people who just wanted to sell their soul for some stardom and some notoriety and money. And he mentioned that book. He said that book changed his life.
Yeah,
and it's called what again? Jekyll Island.
The Creature from Jekyll Island. Jekyll Island is an island off the East Coast, and according to a lot of people don't understand. I've gone a little more into detail so it was the Rothschilds and all these bankers that met at Jekyll Island. They had a camp there. And according to the Spanish explorers, it was well documented by sailors and people that Jekyll Island still had giants living on it. and that the giants were the Nephilim, right? And they saw human
Which the
sacrifice.
Bible talks about. The angels wanted, desiring to be with human women, came down from heaven and usurped or gave up their uh, their home to come down and get together with chicks.
Right, and
That's it.
they can't
That's in the
procreate.
Bible. Yeah, and they created this. King David with taking on the giants, and
Yes.
that was most likely a result of this with the Nephilim, as you call them. Yeah,
Yeah, and so these people existed. So the camp where the Rothschilds currently have their like summer camp is over all the graves of the giants. So these people have been involved in the occult and the giants. A lot of people believe that what they're taking out under Gaza is the Nephilim. Many people I've seen that Satan took his throne under Israel about 20 years ago and has been ruling from there since. So there's all kinds of crazy things that go on. I know there was a lot of like, where was that prison, Abu Ghraib? Uh, they had to constantly rotate the people that were working down there. I guess part of it's underground, and they can hear the screams and the yells because supposedly the Nephilim are under the Euphrates River. And I
right.
don't know if you've seen those military stories where in Afghanistan, the military supposedly captured several giants. Have you seen that?
No, no, I
Mm.
have not.
I'll send that to you. That's a pretty interesting story, and it's come
Yes.
out from all different parts of the military, from former soldiers who witnessed what was going on down there. They killed a lot of the soldiers trying to take them down, but apparently they removed them to some military bases and actually have them in custody, or they killed them and they're examining their bodies or some. That's one of the big Afghan stories that kept resurfacing for about last 15 years. So I have no way
Wow.
of telling, but these
Okay.
people, I work in the mining industry. They've discovered skeletons of giants all over. You go to Catalina off the coast of California. The museum in Catalina is the giants from one of the giants that used to live on Catalina Island. So people
Interesting.
can do with that what they want. If they want to live in, if they live in California, they can trot right on over, or they can go to any mining museum in the world, and there's usually stories, old newspaper articles where they talk about finding the remnants of the giants in the old mining areas. So all right. So after we've
Something.
gone through all that, I'm finally going to get to the CCP because I really feel like it's important for what's going
Yes.
on. Tariffs, we are at war. We have been at war with China for several years. One of the big misconceptions is there's a 1.5 billion people in China. That is not true. The Chinese government itself admits through their statistics that over 200 million people died during COVID, and that people that have done from Russian people to Chinese people who are expats who've left the country, they're using all the data from how many children start kindergarten, how many vaccinations. Right now, they're having an overwhelming epidemic of small children dying of heart attacks because of the vaccinations they gave them. So these people are communists, are eugenicists, and they believe a lot of people don't understand that Bill Gates, his father founded Planned Parenthood with Margaret Sanger. They were eugenicists, and they not only believe that you should wipe black people off the face of the earth, that you should also wipe off the Chinese population. These are the City of London eugenicist Vatican people, are the same ones who financed the CCP, the overthrow of China, and have enslaved those people. So a lot of people, they all look up to these kings and queens. Believe me, the kings and queens of Europe have highly benefited from communism. And
The whole Hong Kong thing. England owned Hong Kong, like a 100-year lease, and then just a few years ago they gave it back to China,
okay,
and
that had
China.
to do with the Opium Wars. Now, the Opium Wars were fought to subjugate the Chinese because they didn't want the foreign people coming in and invading. They'd seen what had happened all over Europe by the same Catholic Roman Empire Church. They had a closed country. The British had more advanced war machines, ships and everything. So they had two opium wars. They enslaved China, and through that, they took over the China. People don't understand that China and India used to be the ruling world leaders for thousands of years. We never hear about that in our history, but they literally collapsed the oldest existing culture in the world. They put in the Chinese and they took over their banking system. And to this day, the city of London manages China's money. So that's one of the things that I want to talk about today, because a lot of people, and of course, there's always these internal power structure issues that go on, because they had control of them for a while, and then one leader breaks out and they go against it. But in the long run, they control. Like right now, they're saying China's dumping all the debt, which isn't true. It's our European allies who are dumping all the debt. Who isn't agreeing with us on the tariffs? Canada wants to put a 200 and some percent on our milk into Canada, but they get nothing coming in here, and we're the bad guys.
Yeah.
So the
It's stunning
system,
to me how ignorant people are on that whole thing.
tariffs are protecting the elite, because they can control the pricing and they can control what's going on in their country, and they can block. And tariffs are going to be better in the long run, because European people are going to be able to get cheaper products, like American medicines and stuff that Chinese people want, and it's hugely taxed. It's going to be cheaper than the Chinese stuff. So all of these different structures, socialist, communism, are about protecting their own. And we, of course, should protect our own. But you have to understand their construct is to exploit everyone else for the benefit of themselves, and not the regular people, but the people that are in control. And so this right now, a lot of people are upset. And CCP, again, China has been collapsing for years. Their factories have been closing for years. There's millions and millions. I just did a show in January talking about that. I'm extremely worried the next move is they're going to starve everybody to get rid of the last few 100 million. So really, a lot of people internationally, statisticians from all over the world, believe there's only 500 to 600 million Chinese left, and that through COVID, they're probably going to knock out more. A lot of people, people have to understand, it was the Eco Health Alliance the US government was funding. It became too dangerous to do it in the United States, and there was much backlash, even from people who were communists at places like Harvard and all those places, how dangerous it was. So they shipped it to China. And then subsequently, you could go online, and one guy I watched does satellites. There was 24-hour incinerators in every city, and there was just lines of them, and they were just incinerating bodies for months. So the Chinese people are just beginning to understand. They go into cities, there's no one there. They go back to their villages, there's no one there. There's entire cities that are empty, and not just these ghost cities, regular cities. There's one city in southern China where it's only Africans left that are kind of there trading. I guess it's better than Africa, right? But there's all these different things going on that we're not being exposed to. China is collapsing. The CCP is losing their power. They've already been cut off. And what Xi Jinping is worried about is if they don't fight back and they don't use the tariffs as the reason this is what Europe's doing, this is what Canada's doing, this is what China's doing, this is what our own leaders are doing, because they lied to us about 4 years about the banking system collapse. Hello, we should have known that. Hence the hyperinflation, and the reason they were printing all the money. 90% of the money they print stays in the country to buy war weapons, so it stayed in our banks. Otherwise, our banks would have not been liquid until now. So all of the stuff that's been going on, whether you like Trump or not, most of it has nothing to do with him. All of these things were set in place. China has been and is collapsing, like all communist governments normally do. They would have collapsed in the 70s if Henry Kissinger, another commie banker, claims to be Jewish but doesn't believe in God. These are the people that are ruining the world right now. And so the CCP, Xi just put out a leaked document. And I mean, I'm not sure this was leaked or this was just a setup, but it is a secret plan that was given out to all of his officials. Everybody's trips were canceled. It was a secret document. All the CCP officials all over China had to come into the offices and read these secret documents, and they weren't allowed to take anything out. But here's just kind of the the blowback of what they plan to do. And this is the crazy thing. China
Yeah.
has a shrinking population and people are bankrupt. They have no money to open new markets. Canada, same thing. Canada's economy is they're like, "Oh, we're going to increase our trade with Germany and France." Oh, really? Oh, well, Germany finally admitted they've been in a recession for years, if not a depression. Britain's in the same situation. So who are all these new markets they're opening people to? All the tariffs are doing are exposing the players in this international cartel.
It's been
So
brilliant. It's been absolutely brilliant, and it is working, bringing manufacturing back to the U.S.
in
and
overtime,
and R&D, research and development, bringing it back to the U.S. And we're seeing. I mean, who would have thought Apple,
well,
which
we're
is
in a wartime economy.
would have
Russia,
said, yeah, we're not going to be building our phones in China anymore.
no.
Wow.
Well, and the reality is that was just a way for the elites to all the labor laws, because like if you look at close from Bill Gates family to Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, their family lived for 1,000 years on slavery. So they just were, communism is modern slavery. They're just going to convince you it's better for you when they own you and tell you what to think. Communism is the new slave system. They've just repackaged it because their system failed. So they've just put it
Interesting.
out in a new, like a new
Interesting. You're
story.
absolutely right. I hadn't even considered that aspect of it. I'm like, why are these big corporations so worshiping communist entities, but yet at the same time turning around and hating on Russia, which is still really a communist society, isn't it?
Okay, well, no. Okay,
No, you think it's
newsflash.
not.
Okay, so yes, communism is, and there is the element of communism and the lefties, just like in every single country. I'm not saying I agree with everything that Russia does, but the United States would have not won the Revolutionary War. It would not have won the Civil War. It would not have won World War I or World War II without the help of the Russians. That's why they want this rift, and they want us to be at war with each other so they can drag us into that. If you noticed, all of a sudden, the British are saying today, well, maybe NATO isn't a reality. Maybe we need to have peace talks, because the Vatican is the head of the religion and control of the world. The City of London is the money, and the Americans are the blood. And they've been using us to fulfill their destiny for a long time. Even Zionism is a hijacked construct. Zionism is a 3,000-year-old construct that started with the Lutherans in Germany. It has nothing to do with what they say it has to do today, right? So these people have warped everything to fit their construct, and they've removed our real history so we don't understand it. So getting back to China, China's going to target the political elites with foreign assets. And I don't know if you remember this, but about 10 years ago, Putin did the same thing. He said, look, we're at war with the EU. You need to bring your money home because they're just going to seize it anyway. And what did they do during COVID? Or during the Ukraine war? They seized all the Russians' bank accounts and all their assets in Europe, and now they have nothing. So this is kind of similar. They are telling anyone with over $200,000, all the foreign assets and all the people out, anybody with money in China has money outside China. So they have to bring all their money back to China. And they're also instructed to dump 1 trillion in stock and 2 trillion in corporate equity and debt securities at short notice to destabilize the US markets. Well, China's market is collapsing. Their stock market is collapsing. Why would they want to sell the most viable stock that they've got? So again, I think this is a distraction, because you know who's really selling into our stock? The City of London, Germany, France, our real enemies, Canada. And so when you really look at who's doing the trading, I watch different traders and they're like, China isn't dumping. It's the Europeans that are dumping. So people who actually watch the market, but again, it's to put us all in this crazy against China, against Russia, because they need war. Whenever the system has collapsed, they
And it
bring.
has a twofold benefit for them. It turns people against stupid people against Trump. Oh, Trump's causing the collapse of the stock market. Well, what a ridiculous thing! Horrible, horrible president. Look what he's doing. He's ruining us. He's not making it better. He's ruining us. And they say it loud enough and often enough, just like the Nazis will tell you, people will believe it. And so it's got that benefit too. If you can hurt the stock market and make the whole economic system that Donald Trump is trying to successfully put into place, including taking down the Fed.
And that's true too, and this is what we're really fighting. I mean, we're all of this blood and money and the virus and all these things because people were waking up, as they call it, and they know that they only have a certain amount of time because there's more of us than there are of them. And so they were gonna, one of the things that's really worried, and I was on the show, a few shows over the last few months, is that China's trying to return itself to a domestic, self-dependent economy. They've spent all of the last years totally screwing their own people and not paying any money. All their buildings are falling down. Like there's entire channels where you can just watch buildings collapsing and all the Belt and Road stuff. In Thailand, buildings have completely collapsed. All the bridges are collapsing. Elevators, people walk in and fall down the chute. Escalators, because they don't service anything. Everything under communism is about meeting quotas and has nothing to do. I was just watching this Chinese ship captain, and the reason that they're saying, oh, our ports are the busiest ever, because they get paid every time they dock at a port. Crazy communist stuff. I mean, usually when you dock at a port, you pay the port so you can dock there. And they're just moving empty ships around. If you look, they say they're the biggest EV market in the world. There's total videos where people are just going with cameras, and as far as you can see, the
Nothing but
government
electric vehicles.
purchased its own
Acres and acres
cars.
and acres, and they're not even covered. They're not tarped. They build them and then they put them on hundreds of acres. This fenced in property, and they're not even trying to hide it, not even from satellite photos or anything else. You're right. In the thousands of these electric
No,
vehicles
just
just
put
sitting there,
every
not moving. They build
because
them. And what happens to those when they decompose, when they break down with all those batteries and all that horrible crap that they rape from the earth with child labor to put into their batteries? What's going to happen to all of that? And they don't have a good shelf life, do they?
no, the corporations of the world have completely destroyed China. Right now, they used to be self-sufficient. They had their own oil, they had their own food, they had their own gas. They import everything now. And what's super scary is they've destroyed 60% of the land through the water is highly undrinkable in 60-70% of the areas. You can't use it for crops. They built the largest water reserve in the world, but they have droughts and flooding everywhere because they're just killing off the people. This is
Yeah.
really what they're doing. And I don't know what I believe, having worked in communist systems themselves, the reason they do all the building is because it's a way of stealing money from the government. So it's a way of getting back the money from the government. So they
And to
steal it
keep people
all.
working,
Well, and
to keep them quiet, to keep them compliant, and keep them working. So the shovel-ready jobs of the Obama era come to mind, where literally we're paying other people who aren't working to work. We are with our tax dollars. It was just insane, and everyone's going, "Oh, look at the great things he's doing." Never forget the signs. This is another, Obama work release program job, whatever the wording was. Don't ever forget. I'm seeing that on roads. I'm seeing that on rural roads and so on. These signs everywhere, and I'm going. This harkens back
well, you notice
to
those went away.
Franklin Roosevelt and his little communist, shovel-ready job system there when he was supposed to bring us out of the Depression. What he did was prolong it and make it
Well, and
last
he gave
longer
the
and
birth
longer.
certificates back to the Romans. People
while they were
extrovert.
putting
He
their
was one
little
of those.
socialist systems into place, all to take care of us. Take you like you, daddy government will take care of it. It's the same thing, isn't it? And that's happening in China. And now reports are coming in that people who are going to work every day because they have to are not even being paid.
No, there's
I just had someone on the other day who said they're giving them food, but they're allotting only a certain amount, like 30 pounds of rice for an entire family for a month. That kind of crap. So,
okay, well, this will go on to my next thing. They've
yeah,
just implemented the rationing system again,
there it
which
is.
we all,
There,
yeah.
that's what she said. That's what she said. And I didn't know what was going on. In lieu of pay, they're not even being paid for these jobs that they have to go to.
Well, and the thing is what a lot of people don't understand about China is people are already working 7 days. Like you look at a Chinese job ad and it
That's
says
right.
40 hours a week, vacation, and then below it, it says expected to work 16 hours a day, live on the facility 7 days a week. Like they put what the job application is, and then they put a paragraph underneath saying, no, that's just a lie.
That's
This
called
is
the
what
fine
you're
print.
really doing.
I
So
was
they're
surprised they even put it up there because they can do whatever they want. Who's going to tell them no?
Well,
Um,
communist system, you have to save face for the communists. You see, it's all about saving face, and it's all about just with our politics. Oh, most politicians lie, and that's just there happen to be a lot more in control in China than there is in other countries. So the rationing is this. They say that the rationing is going to be the secret war against the United States. And so they've told all of their military to start rationing, and they've said that they're going to go back to the system that they had in 1970s. So
because which is pure communism. Government takes care of you from cradle to grave. Um, Interesting. So instead of actually expanding their territory and trying to make for a better system, they're going all in on nothing but
well, they
control and
have no
communism
choice. See,
because it's their religion.
no, but the thing is Xi Jinping is worried that the world is going to hold China responsible for 70 trillion in loss. What the world lost because of COVID. But you have to understand who financed the Echo Alliance and gave the money to the Chinese to run that lab. Bill Gates and the US government. So to me, we've already declared war on China, and we've already murdered half their population. So this is something that, and not we, the regular Americans, but this World Economic Forum, these people who planned on, see, they planned at the same time of killing off Europe and the United States. If you looked at their graphs of what they thought was going to be happening in this last 10 years, they said that only 10% of us were going to be left. So it just happened to get out of hand in China because the Chinese lied about it for a long time. Because they're
How is Trump going to come into affecting or ignoring this whole situation with China? Do you think?
Well, I think that China has its own internal problems and it's making a lot of noise. And again, the Chinese leaders are captured by the same people who control us. So it's not even a war with the Chinese people. The whole world is in a battle with this deep satanic cult that controls the world and wishes to rule all of us. And so that's what we have to understand. It's not Catholic, Christian, it's not Muslim, Hindu, it's not any of those things. It's the dark, deep force that's occupied the world basically since the Civil War. And the world has
And
gone.
how does President Trump play into that? Is he a wrench in their works, or is he ultimately part of it?
I am out on that one. Some of the things he's doing right now, I really disagree with his whole thing with the Fed. This is what really happened in 2021 is the financial system collapse. So all that money we printed went into the financial system because in 2008, remember, everybody got mad because we bailed the banks out. So this
Right.
time they just created some other thing, and uh, here we are today with a majority of the wealth being transferred to the people like Bill Gates and Fauci. And if you look at the billionaires created during COVID, you start
And the
to,
politicians, don't forget that.
Oh, of course. So
Going in making 120 something a year and coming out worth 200 million. Uh,
right.
Nancy Pelosi kind of stuff.
Well,
It
uh, the Chinese also plan to, they want to deepen their strategic partnerships with North Korea, Russia, and Iran, which we can see them doing. They also want to strengthen it with Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand. Now, Thailand's having huge problems because Chinese built buildings that are literally collapsing. Just one last week where 104 people died in a high rise because they don't put interior, they cheat. So I watched one video where a guy was just going in an apartment building and they call them tofu drags, and they're literally just like plywood, and they're supposed to be interior support walls, and these guys are just knocking them out with a hammer because they're all fake. There's no steel support beams in the building, and anybody can go look at all those. China Insider has some good stuff, and there's some other guys that are some South African guys that have a show called The China Show, and they lived in China for 20 years and are both married to Chinese women, and they have a really good insight. And of course, China's
It's
tried
hard
to.
to get any true Chinese nationalists and Chinese citizens who are here now. It's even still hard to get them to talk honestly about what goes on there
Well, do you
because they're
understand why?
scared to death for their own family and friends back in China who they've, it's well known, will go after your family and friends who are still here if you dare to say anything bad about us while you're there. And
But
that's been
during the
going on for a long time. That was going on during communist Russia too, when athletes would come here and they try and defect, and remember all that. The people are scared to death, but yet they're glad to be out.
well, one
But
of
I can't get them to talk about it until this woman, who I'm going to post the show this week. Her name is Wendy. She speaks very openly and honest about it, and I'm like, "Ah, sister, aren't you scared?" No, Lord's got it, and most of us are out. Most of us
well,
are
the
out.
Chinese are operating 190 police stations in the United States.
Here in the U.S.
Yes, and they are.
Yes,
If Xi Jinping set out a decree the week before this one, and he said that it's the duty of all Chinese citizens to steal technology and spy on behalf of the Chinese government. So this is why all of a sudden 40,000 student visas were canceled. They're going to be like, oh, well, that's not fair. But Xi Jinping just put out, and everybody knows they've been spying. If you understand, it was our education system that brought communism to China through Yale in China. China was a closed society. How did they hear about some German Marxist? It was George Bush Sr.'s cousin who brought communism to China and worked with the Union Bank and Wall Street in the city of London to overthrow China and bring about communism.
I was
So,
just a kid when Richard Nixon opened up China. Went there and visited, and it was all over the news. I remember because my dad was commenting on it, and I'd watch the news with him even as just a kid. And At the time, I thought, oh, why? They're a closed society. Let them do what they want to do. Let them let them handle their own things. Why do we have to get in the middle of it and get involved with it? Because that never seems to turn out well. Um, but Richard Nixon really championed that. And years later, of course, I kind of forget politics. I don't care. I'm going to be, Mr. Freewheeling, happy-go-lucky. Look at shiny stuff. And now I look back and I go, that was a horrible thing. That was a terrible decision. And I don't. And
why
you
they got rid
mentioned,
of Nixon.
yeah,
It's Henry Kissinger and David Rockefeller
you
who put
mentioned Kissinger,
that,
right? That's
right?
kind of what brought that up. So, why do you? And the whole reason why that was given was, to open up trade, because we don't have enough money, because we don't have enough different countries to partner with and trade with. Why do you have to have China? Why is that necessary? Because it's the right thing to do. We want to bring democracy to them.
So they could steal all of our IP, so they could save the collapsing communist system. We stepped in when Russia collapsed because the system failed, but we stepped in under Henry Kissinger, and their long-term goal was to genocide the Chinese people because they're eugenicists, to destroy all manufacturing base in Europe and the United States, which they did, So it was a long-term goal. And you know who fired Henry Kissinger off the executive committee right before he left office? Trump. 2 days before Trump left office the last time, he fired Kissinger. And literally, I was seated next to Henry Kissinger at a dinner right after Tiananmen Square. And I didn't believe one thing he was saying. He's like, "Oh, it was a student revolt and this and that." And I mean, I known he was dirty forever. And
You sat right next to him. Is he smell as bad as he looks like he would smell?
well, to me, he's always looked the same. I could never understand
I know. Isn't that
once
the truth?
Project
And
Paperclip.
that voice with his accent.
Yeah. Once you understand Project Paperclip, how the United States extracted all the high level Nazis and put them at high levels of our government, the Germans lost the war, but the Nazi party did not. And what we're seeing today is the end. You'll notice, like George Bush Sr., his father financed the Nazis. All of the things that have gone on in China and all these, that World War II generation is dying off. And all of a sudden, we're starting to see some light because those people set those, their fathers set those plans in place at the turn of the
Again,
last century.
is Trump for that or against it?
I I don't know. I'm out on Trump. If he does something good, then I can say that. But he came out of this system. He's doing things with the Federal Reserve I completely disagree with. But again, we're playing chess. And so there's a lot of different things that you have to sit back and see.
Looking at what he accomplished the first time he was president, and looking what he's already accomplished, and it's not even 100 days yet, is incredibly encouraging to me. But I keep having people on my side, on the right, going, look at Trump, he's all a part of it. This is going to be this and going to be that. And I'm like, oh, conspiracy theory stuff. Just for heaven's sake, let him sit back and do what we put him in office to do, and clean things up and fix things. I'm not going to dive right into that whole stuff.
Well, right now we're divvying up Syria, which is part of the Greater Israel Plan. They stated 35 years ago. So I am not in favor of a lot of things that are going on in the Middle East. And why are we there in the first place? And why invading Iraq and Iran are all part of the Greater Israel Plan. And we've repeatedly done what they've told us to do. And we never got to Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell today, but
No,
they are the enforcement arm of the military arm of the Vatican system of the bankers. And their job was to blackmail, extort, and spy on our people. And people don't understand this, but this was in Canada. They had a similar guy. He used to be a fashion designer. I used to go to he used to have some stores in Canada. I spent a lot of time in Vancouver, and he was like had parties and events all the time. He's in jail for trafficking. And I don't remember, do you remember the NXIVM cult where that Tawny, the one that accuses Trump of having sex with her and whatever, the stripper? Well, she's got that tattoo from the NXIVM cult, where part of the cult is accusing men of things they didn't do to bring them down. That's part of the cult. And who was running that? Like Ghislaine Maxwell, Robert Maxwell was a famous industrialist, an extracted Nazi that was put into high levels of power. He was supposed to be put to death, but was instead brought to England. I was working in England at the time in the early 90s when he supposedly died because he'd just stolen $600 million and he was blackmailing the Mossad to bail him out of his troubles, right? And then Jeffrey Epstein shows up a few years later in DC doing the same thing. But that NXIVM cult was being run by Edgar and Peter Brofman's daughter. And she's currently serving time in prison for human trafficking and sex slavery and kidnapping and all the things like Maxwell and Epstein. They've got the Brunel guy that was down in France, same thing, from a wealthy family. He died. They didn't report it here, but he mysteriously died in a high security prison too. So I believe these people were extracted back to Israel, who they work for. So I don't believe they're dead, and they're probably living out their retirement, just like Robert Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell's family has a way of falling off things. Her father fell off a boat and died. Her sister's husband fell off a mountain and died when he was in
Ghislaine Maxwell, if you don't know or remember, Epstein was Epstein's girlfriend, assistant, basically the secretary of the organization of blackmail and intimidation that they created. And I thought it was so odd that she actually got away to a country where we were not able to extradite her out and all that. So she was protected like P. Diddy tried to do. But then came back and kind of walked in and went, okay, well, here I am.
Well, again, I believe she's an intelligence asset, and
What was that
whether she's
all about?
really in jail or not, I highly doubt. She's probably somewhere, or they're just keeping her somewhere to keep her quiet. But I saw an interview once with the guy who was a guard at the prison she was supposedly being kept in, and he said that number isn't a number from that prison. So I believe she could be in a military prison of some sort, and that's what the guard who'd worked there before, because she is we're at war, and she's an agent of a hostile nation. So a lot of people think Maxwell, that they just met when they came to New York. But her father was he was his protege. Originally, his father, Ghislaine Maxwell, wanted Jeffrey Epstein to marry his daughter, but it became apparent that his taste ran much younger. And so I believe she was his handler, because she's from a high-level Mossad, MI6 family, CIA, and that's why we haven't seen much with Biden's son, because he himself is a CIA operative, and he's involved in huge amounts of CIA operations. So I think that's why he wasn't openly taken down either.
He's not smart enough.
Well, he's an agent. He's just a intelligence agent. He's running all the.
Don't you need intelligent people to be intelligence agents?
No. You'd think that was true, but
yes, I would. I would think that was true.
Back to China. They are trying to gain influence, and they're trying to stir up international anger against the United States for the tariffs. And so they're trying to weaken ties with Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and bring down the dominance. And this has been since after the Great Revolution failed in the 70s. Mao wanted to kick the United States out of the United Nations. So this is just kind of one of their crazy plans. I mean, China's been lying about their population. They don't have an exploding market. A majority of their population is over 60. There are no young people. They have what they call the Bailan movement. And that one is like lie flat. And the other one is just basically do nothing, because the children have no hope. They're like, why work in a factory 16? They don't want to have children. The same government agency that was in charge of forcibly aborting children if you had more than one. And if you had two children, they would come burn your house down.
By law. I think people either didn't know it or have forgotten it, that was in policy. That was their policy for decades. You could only have one child. And that's why so many female babies were just born. I mean, aborted. As soon as they were born, it's a girl.
That's right.
So how do you maintain an exploding population they keep talking about, and everybody says they have, when you're offing kids and you're punishing families that have more than one?
Well,
and that was in place for decades.
And right. And then now they have that same one going around demanding people marry immediately and have 3 to 5 children. That same organization, they're literally in the towns and areas. They have the same people who were calling to see if the women were ovulating and when they plan to give birth. This is literally. Wow. People don't understand the atrocities of communism. That's why I like to focus on China. And again, I have friends that grew up in Thailand, and some Chinese friends, some friends from Thailand. This isn't against the regular people. They have been enslaved and tortured and starved and subjugated to the things. I mean, Bill Gates' partner went over there in the 90s, and he had people never talk about this, but he built a program that tracked women's ovulation. And if they found out they were pregnant, they would forcibly capture them and take them to an abortion clinic and forcibly abort the children. And a lot of people don't also understand that organ, tissue, and all this kind of harvesting and is involved in our cosmetic industry. It's involved in new medicines. And this is what they're using this stuff for. Nothing is wasted. When they abort the children, they're selling it to the different big pharma companies and stuff that they've got going for cosmetics. A lot. You have to be really careful with your cosmetics and to see what you're getting at a plastic surgeon these days, because a lot of them could have aborted baby parts and things like that in them. So they want to draw us into the dispute between Taiwan because they have a military dominance over there, and this is actually part of Xi Jinping's plan. And they want us lure our ships into the Taiwan Strait because they believe that that's one of the few places. If you've seen anything about modern warfare, the Chinese and both the US have been building old systems designed on 100 years ago warfare. If we can see drones are the future, you don't need to build a ship. You don't need
No.
to build all that. And if you look at the military Chinese channels, um, like the US equipment that was failing in Ukraine, the Chinese equipment is failing dismally. They've just taken out the top 70 leaders of the military industrial complex. They've either disappeared, died, or been imprisoned. So there's something major going on there. And plus, none of their stuff works. So they're selling it to all these countries, and it's
Wow.
not working. Because again, they cheat.
Wow.
They cheat. And not that our
Mm.
executives don't cheat. I'm not just saying this just happens in China, but
Right.
their system is basically rewards cheating because of the system that they have and the way they can never really tell their leaders the real truth about what's happening. So their other goal is to destroy the US military bases in South Korea, Japan, and Guam. And they want to get us to retreat out of their area and basically just have dominance around Hawaii. And there's a dispute too whether Hawaii is really still part of the United States. When this international bankruptcy occurred, the United States acquired Hawaii under illegal pretense. So there's still a dispute of whether that is really the
Dang, girl.
Hawaii. Yeah. And that's
I want to have you on again real soon, and I want to talk about all of this kind of stuff that that I'm not hearing from anywhere else. And I know that I know there's other shows out there talking about it, and I've seen some of them and so on, and really going down the rabbit hole kind of stuff. And for the most part, there are a whole bunch of I'm going to make a blanket statement here, but they come across as just a bunch of redneck hillbilly, dumber than dumb. Well, I'm a good old boy from Bakersfield. I'm not all that. I mean, I'm intelligent, but I'm definitely not all that educated. Most of my education has been self-taught, and I don't teach very well. So I have I have a lot of questions, but I am not one that jumps immediately on this stuff and go, "Oh, that sounds right." No,
sure.
not at all. But you have life experience to back up so much of what you're saying. And I had somebody on just a few weeks ago. We started talking about MK Ultra, and she went away. All of a sudden, she was gone off the
Oh,
show.
really?
Yeah, it was freaky. And I waited. I texted her. I said, "Please come back on." I don't know what happened. She came back on. We started talking about it again. Gone. This happened 3 times.
You mean right while you were recording it, or?
Yeah, and we were live. No, we were live on Facebook and YouTube. Gone. Freaky. I've had some bizarre things happen in my career, but nothing quite that blatant because it was every time we brought up that subject. So I'd like to do that and maybe even have you on with her, Simone
Sure.
Anderson. You would be great to, and I could just sit back and go, what?
Well, of course, I've
But
never been
I'd
to.
never even heard about it until she brought it up, and I felt kind of dumb that I never even heard about something that everybody else seems to know about.
Oh,
I
you've never
didn't.
heard of MK Ultra?
No.
Oh,
I asked her, was that some kind of paraglider? What is that? Is it a parachute with an engine strapped on it? What are you talking about? MK Ultra.
well, we have
No.
all the capture of the media through Project Mockingbird. There's all these other projects that come out of it, and you can go to the CIA. They say they did it. I mean, there's no. They openly talk about the children that were abused. If someone they wanted to compromise needed a child, Paul on his show recently had a woman who was the personal sex slave of Jerry Brown's father and Alan Cranston. And she's written an extensive book about the tunnels under Los Angeles and under the Getty Museum. And even people like Will Smith's kids are on talking about it. The tunnels
Really?
under the Getty and how they were trafficked down there. And, you know, his kids have a lot of problems. His son, you know, testifies about how his dad took him to P. Diddy parties and he had to have sex with men when he was a kid. So none of this is all in the open. That's why I believe that things right now are
Not in
there
the open,
is
but not is might be in the open, but it's not being reported. So most people don't know.
well it's in the open, and is that people from all of these spectrums who've been afraid to talk about these things their whole lives for fear of their own life are on the internet now, on all the spectrums, from uh, Black comedians and actors and actresses to you know, people from I mean, all of these different people from all over the world. This is what really got me down this thing about 10 years ago, because they started having the international tribunals for the crimes against children, and they were bringing people from all over the world that had been trial. You know, here in California, we're at the epicenter of the child sex slave rings and
So
catering to
much of what we do and what we've done and the horrible things that we have accomplished through it seems to be coming from the CIA, which is basically a secretive organization that gets unlimited funding to do whatever the hell they want. And they run roughshod over not only other countries, but our country. And anybody who dares to step up and speak up about it, they get shut up and shut down, including politicians, owned and operated, I believe, seemingly. I hope I'm wrong, but the CIA seems to be absolutely one of the most wicked things in the world.
And the CAA is a continuation of the Roman Vatican blackmail, extortion, control system. This is the same thing that communists use. When I lived in Russia, I was living on a resort that was specifically designed to blackmail foreign politicians. And all the rooms had cameras and microphones, because they'd bring the foreign, because you think it was easy for them to keep control. So they'd bring all the politicians there on some kind of event.
And
They
while
would
they're at the bar downstairs at the hotel, getting their nice, fancy, exclusive cocktails, and next thing you know, 1, 2, 3, 14 very beautiful or supple or young or all of the above men,
Yeah.
boys and girls coming up and going, "Oh, we like you, we want you, we want to be with you," and these idiots will not think to themselves, perhaps I'm being played here. No, their
Oh,
egos, and they're so arrogant, and they
well,
just go, "Oh yeah, I am all that."
yeah, yeah. Well,
And next thing you know, it's all been recorded, hasn't it?
and exactly. And this is the way that people have kept control. This is the system that Epstein and Maxwell were working under. This is what the Nexium cult was about. There was different. We just got focused on a few different people because they were from North America or Europe, but these operations are going on worldwide. And frankly, I think that's why we have so many people who pledge their soul to the system, to Satan, or whatever you want to call it, the cult of the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. And even if they want to get out, they can't. And that's why I think you
They
see some.
cannot. I know. It's like, how do we recover from this? God.
Well, right, but they're under threat. Like a lot of people like Prince, they knew the day they were going to die, because they sold their soul and they get that fame. And as it gets closer to the time they're going to die, they're going to be doing everything. And I've listened to a lot of interviews with the woman who used to live with him, and he literally slept in bulletproof. And that other comedian, Cat Williams, also. I mean, they slept in full-on metal armor and stuff for years of their life, because they were exposing these things. And the fact that these people have come out make me believe that something is happening in this system. The old system is collapsing. The question is the new system for the
What's going to
people,
replace it?
and
Yeah.
what's going to replace it, because we're still all heading, the same goals are being achieved. We have no faith in our government, we have no faith in our elections, we don't trust politicians, we want all of our established things like the FBI and the CIA, all of these established things. We want them torn down. And what we have to understand is they're playing both sides. We're in a Hegelian dialectics, and they're getting us to where they want us to go, which is somewhere we never wanted, but they're going to use these arguments. So this is what we're really fighting right now, and that's what makes it scary, because it is hard to know. But like you said, I believe that the good people throughout history, we've overcome this before, and that we're going to overcome it again. And every day that goes by, more people are looking at the world the way that it really is. And we're all trying to figure out how we're going to make the world a better place and bring about the goodness in the world, and
It's
not
all
always
pointing.
focus
It's
on that.
all we absolutely have to return to God, return to the Creator of the universe, for heaven's sake, and for heaven's sake, literally, and start praying against this evil. Start coming together corporately as a body of believers. Ignore the denominations. I think that denominations are the worst thing that ever happened to Christ's church. It was one of the devil's greatest enemies, or tools rather, is to divide Christ's church through
Yes.
denominations. And
Well,
no, you're right. I am with you. I'm a follower of Christ Jesus. I currently attend a Baptist church, but I've told my pastor I'm not a Baptist.
well,
And I'm just
you
attending
know,
here because you continue preaching God's word, and that's what I'm interested in. And we're not to forsake the gathering of ourselves together. So don't give up your search for a good Bible believing, God worshiping church. Don't give up that. Please don't give up on that.
according to the documents of the Catholic Church, the only church, and I'm including Buddhism and Taoism and all those things, that's not under the control of the Catholic Church is the Seventh day Adventist Church. That's the only one they claim they have no control over. So
Interesting.
I'll leave it to you. And that's why we see, for instance, we just celebrated Easter, which is a pagan Roman holiday, which is a sex ritual.
And when I said that, I had so many Christians attacking me
I
on my
know.
Facebook page. I mean, they went after me hard and hard. People who I thought were real believers, people who I thought were good friends, were using very harsh tones and language towards me. And you don't expect to get it from the people who you thought were with you, part of your family.
Well,
And it's because I was saying the same thing. These are pagan egg rabbits having to do with fertility. The name Easter itself is not a Christian name. It's an English translation. There's
Ishtar,
several
the name
explanations.
of the goddess.
Ishtar, the goddess of fertility, pagan goddess Ishtar. Yeah, and they freaked. They attacked me in ways I've never been attacked really before from my own fellow Christians. It was
Well,
stunning
and
to
that's
me.
what you have to understand. People get so caught up in all this stuff. We have to remember we're not at war with each other. If someone disagrees with you about immigration, let them disagree with you about immigration. We can't become what we choose to. This is what all of this is done. And the reason that there's so many different Catholic faiths, or not, faiths under, they allowed all that to happen. So we would fight amongst each other and not
Right.
notice that that's
It's
exactly what
division.
God told us not to do.
Right. Right. Jesus came down here to end all religion.
If you read the Bible, if anyone wants to verify what we're saying, just read the Bible during the persecution of Christ when they went and picked him up. And they brought him to the former priests. Again, the priest class has always ruled the world. And the top priest in the system of the day was this guy named Annas. And Jesus was brought to his house. Under Jewish law, they broke all the rules of the court. And it was during Passover. They were preparing the Passover lamb. So they've changed our calendar again. I think I should come on another time, and I'm going to tell you and explain to you the time that we're really in, and the
Okay.
fact that the devil has deceived us. We don't even know what time it is.
You mentioned that today, and I was shocked because I've never heard anybody else say that. So
Well,
absolutely. When can you do it? Let's do it.
yeah. I mean, whenever. When are your scheduled days?
Because we've been going like 2 hours now,
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
think
I know. I know.
we've had a break.
Yeah, we need a
Uh,
break.
but I love talking to Simone, and I'm really glad I was able to get you on again. Thank you. Where do we find you? How do we follow what you're doing before I can get you back on again?
Okay, well, my name's Simone Anderson. You can get me at Simone M. Anderson at AOL if you want to send me a note. And then I'm on Rumble at the Lost in Translation show. That's one word. And yeah, I just want people to keep fighting the battle. Don't get discouraged. Things are going to get harder before they get easier. That's just the way of life.
Right.
And we just have to stick to our guns and remember when people do open their hearts and their minds to the things that we're talking about, to not be critical and to not, I told you so. And we all find ourselves doing this. If someone we can have 99% in common with somebody, but when they say something we don't like, it's like they just turn you off like a switch.
Yeah.
That's
Like
not real
that
friendship.
Easter thing,
That's not real
that
love.
Easter
That's not real
post.
respect. Yeah.
No. And it's not, and to put it in the comments there, if as Jesus said, go to them personally if they say something that has offended you or done something. They didn't. They made it a whole public thing, and that's not how you do it as a follower. If you're a true follower of Christ Jesus, we know where to go. Hey, I'm writing you this personal note or a personal message. Here's why I think that what you put up there is not right.
Yes.
But no, they made it very public, a lot of attacking, calling me a Pharisee, which I thought was hilarious.
Well, which is
Uh,
totally hilarious because the Pharisees, Annas was in charge of the Pharisees. Jesus was brought to his house for an illegal trial before they brought him to the actual priest. This guy was really powerful, even though he wasn't the chief priest anymore. He still controlled it, kind of like what we see now at the Vatican. People really think, oh, the president's controlling the country, this leader is controlling the country, but they're really getting their orders from higher up. So
and it's another thing that's very funny about calling me a Pharisee was the Pharisees implemented man-based rules over God and said, you're going to worship this way because we said so. Going
yeah.
against God. That was the biggest thing that Christ had against the religious leaders at the time and that church. And now you're calling me one because I say they brought in man-based, not only man-based, but pagan stuff into the holiest of holy days for followers of Christ Jesus.
Well,
And you're not having a problem with that. You're not questioning it. You're accepting it. You're going to these big churches and having a good old time with your Easter egg hunts and getting pictures with the Easter bunny with your kids. So you're teaching them this crap as well. You don't see that. How do you not see that? How do you not have that kind of discernment? And they attacked. And there
because
was
they're
never,
not really feeling the truth. They're going, like I said, the Catholic Church. Why, if all of the churches, if you went to seminary for a year, I learned this myself just studying. I've been studying the Bible and stuff since I was a kid. That everything they're doing is against what they say. So we know that the church has turned everything in there because the priest class has already ruled the world. Who do you think? It wasn't God who needed the virgins and the best lamb and all
no,
that. It was the
no,
priests that controlled the temple. And so they got the best of everything. God doesn't need to eat. Like
right.
the whole construct is so, once you really look at it, and so that's how we know that all uh, religions, especially the ones considered Christian here in the United States, are under the rule of the Roman Catholic Church, is because they are celebrating all the Roman Catholic holidays. They have Halloween, which was a mass blood sacrifice of children
That was
holiday.
a Day of the Dead thing, right?
We've got Christmas, which is the sun god Semiramis. Jesus was born during the harvest. If you read the Bible, again, I refer you to the Bible, to the older Bibles that actually have the stories, like the Book of Adam and Eve. I don't know if you've ever read the Book of Adam and Eve.
No, never even heard about it.
It talks about how they went to the garden, a gate of the garden every day and begged God to let them back in. And they were in misery to being separated from God. And they lived in this dark, cold cave. And they finally decided to kill themselves because they were so devastated that they'd broken the God and that they were locked outside the garden. And that's where our separation from God began. And this is what the third temple is, reconnecting us to God. It's not a building. God doesn't need a building. Men need buildings. God doesn't need a building. So we
Right.
have to look at the way they wrote uh, in olden times was more poetic and more, it's not the way we would construct it today, the way they were
And
writing.
the whole free will thing, we didn't have kings either, but men kept wanting to have a king. And so God finally, the creator, finally said, okay, because before that was judges. You'd have judges that you go to adjudicate different
Right.
quarrels and squabbles and so on, to make decisions. Somebody, one person, the captain of the ship. But because we've lost that collective mindset, connecting up with God's Holy Spirit and going according to His will and His law and His rules, which are absolutely the best thing for us. But when we turn away from that, He will let us turn to our own way. We see that again and again in Scripture, where you turn away from God, He will, okay, I'll be here when you wake up and you want to come back. But in the meantime,
Well, and that's the truth of people don't understand. That's why I follow Christ, because he doesn't ask for anything. All other religions demand money, and I know the modern religion, and if you wanted
works.
to support your priest class, that's fine. I mean, that actually comes from the ancient Hebrew faith, where the Levites were the priest class, and the other people in the tribes were expected to support them because they spent all of their time doing. But of course, that became corrupted over time. And as we just talked about, Jesus threw them out of the temple because they were doing banking in there. They were selling things. They were doing, history repeats itself. I guess that's the focus of most of the stuff that I say. The reason I study history is so I can figure out what the heck is going on now.
I
Because,
went to a Catholic church in an invitation one time. A friend, when I was living and working in San Francisco for ABC, invited me to go to her church, her Catholic church. And I just thought, well, what the heck? I'll see what it's all about. First thing when I walked in, it was a gift shop. Kind of like Cracker Barrel. You don't get right into the restaurant. You have to go through the gift shop first. It was the same with this Catholic church in San Francisco. And that gave me the creepiest, eeriest feeling. And I had not actually become a Christian at that point. I was exploring, thinking, that turned me off right there, because you mentioned money changers in the temple and so on. So I love talking with you. I want to let you go. I know you're
yeah,
sitting
I know. I've
outside.
got to get go. Well, why don't we say next Tuesday at the same time, and we'll follow up. Did you want to do? Do you want to do the time that we're actually living in? And I'll show you
Yes.
the old calendars and show you.
Yes. I want to know. I'll check my calendar and I'll get back to you. But
Okay.
if it's a go, I'll say right now on the air live, next Tuesday, 12 noon Pacific time.
All
Next
right.
Tuesday, 12 noon Pacific time. And hopefully the weather won't be too hot for you out there, wherever you are.
No, it's a beautiful day out here. I'm hoping that I'm going
Today
to
it is.
get weather.
Now
Yeah.
it might be 105 by next week. We don't know. All right, sister from another mister. I just love you. Thank you very much for your time.
Love you too, Charlie. We're going to finally meet sometime. God bless everybody out there. And remember, it's us against them. People are beautiful in most of the world, and they're our brothers and sisters. We need to pray for them. We need to even pray for our enemies as God instructs us.
That's exactly right. And pray for love, and pray for those who persecute you. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. But that doesn't mean you sit down and shut up and look the other way when
Exactly.
they're doing incredibly evil things.
We don't
Ephesians
remember.
5:11 covers that.
We don't want to become the people that we preach against. And a lot of times people get carried away. The power swings this way, it swings that way. Uh, just
Good
remember to
point.
be a good person and to be open minded. And when we feel like going off on somebody, maybe just sit back a few minutes, because we're in a highly volatile time. And
Yeah.
people they don't remember all the good things, they just remember the bad things
Isn't
sometimes.
that amazing? Out of all the things I've done and charitable work and so on and so forth, all it takes is saying one thing, like Easter has pagan origins. Don't follow it. And you just they completely forget everything that you've done up to that point. You're right. One thing. All it takes is
Yeah.
one thing. All right, hon. Have fun.
All right. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, listeners.
You bet. And may God bless you and keep you. you want to help this show, you want to get in touch, you want to contact me, you want to actually be on the show, you can do that now. I got a new website, and it's charleesimons.com, CharLee, because my middle name's Lee. CharLee Simons, SIMONS, charleesimons.com. You can schedule, be on the show. I find interesting what you're doing or what you're saying. Absolutely, I'll do a show with you. No, I don't charge for any of that, at least not yet. But if you want to financially support, you can certainly do that there as well. CharleeSimons.com, to help encourage this ministry continue and even grow. May God bless you and keep you. May God bless America. Most importantly, America, bless God.